Hey, welcome to Downloaded. This is the show where we gather the most opinionated voices in the tech field today, and the gaming field as it turns out, and focus all that energy on, today, a special edition about gaming post E3, who won, who lost, what's going on there, and everything you ever want to know about the Ouya, but we're afraid to ask. Well, we'll at least cover some of that. I'm Jim Lauterbach, your host. Joining me today, executive producer of Rev3 Games, Adam Sessler.
Hey there.
Also part of Revision 3, and great to see you. Although I just saw you. Down
I
in our
just came
all-company
upstairs.
meeting. Just came upstairs. And a co-worker of mine, who I'm actually super psyched to see, Dan Shu, or just Shu, who's the editor-in-chief of GamesBeat, part of VentureBeat. It's great to see you again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming over. Dan ran EGM and a bunch of other things. EGM, that's still around, I guess, right?
Yeah.
That was your baby for a long time.
For a while, yeah. I was there for like 10, 15 years, I think. But yeah, it's back under the original owner who actually founded EGM.
Right. It's like when I see PC Magazine now, I'm like, I remember that. That was so nice. Well, let's jump in and talk about E3, post E3. The question I think is always the one that I want to ask, because everybody wants to make a competition out of everything. Dan, or Shu, who won E3?
Microsoft, right?
Winners and losers. Who's the big winner? Who won?
Well, Sony, right? And I would say, as an objective kind of guy looking at this, they didn't win it cleanly. There's a lot of questions left.
It wasn't a knockout, right?
Yeah, but publicly, the public perception is they won it hands down, because it's simply because they said all the right things. You know, everything that the gamers want to hear regarding used games, trading games, DRM, and all that stuff. And they came out at $100 cheaper. Like just those things alone, it's easy to declare them the winner.
I mean, yeah, as far as public perception, Sony just did a glorious job to everything Dan said. I think on a practical level, they didn't really say that much. Microsoft in many ways said more, but that was to their deficit. My personal winner, I think, is Ubisoft.
Really?
That if you look at the games that were shown both by Sony and by Microsoft, that are supposed to be demonstrative of next gen and what you're going to be getting, you know, with these new consoles, I thought they were pretty lackluster. They were for the most part, very pretty versions of things that we were all too familiar with. But Ubisoft, and actually to a lesser extent, EA, were showing games and game design that looked like, okay, this is taking advantage of what the power of these consoles have, probably what's going to be happening on the back end, be it the cloud or some other type of online service, that was changing the design to something that probably couldn't be done in this generation of consoles. But like I said, Sony just put on the best show possible, and that, you know, people are still talking about that.
You know why I think Ubisoft's having a good time at E3 is because they're always saving one big new property.
Yeah.
Like last year we had Watch Dogs, this year we had The Division. So they always come out with some big surprise, something that's like, it's not just another, whatever, Rainbow Six or Battlefield, you know. It's just, hey, we're going to show you something new and exciting. You haven't heard of this before. It's kind of cool. It's next generation looking. So that, and when you spoke of publishers, it reminded me of Bethesda.
Yeah.
I thought they had I'm starting to look forward to each E3 because they always have something really cool to show. I was surprised by Wolfenstein New Order. Like, I went in there not caring at all.
No, it's a far more compelling game than what I would have thought.
Exactly.
You know, Wolfenstein wasn't known for its creativity. It was a technical masterpiece, you know, in its era. But
And now they're really driving story in that game. And again, it wouldn't be something I normally would figure like, I'm going to keep an eye on it. But now that I saw it, I'm like, they're doing some really cool things there. And The Evil Within looked really cool. It hit all the notes for me as like a horror fan. So I'm looking forward to those games.
You know, it's interesting what you guys are saying about both Bethesda and Ubisoft, and the way that they kept that one big thing, right? That surprised you. I mean, that's what Apple's been doing for years, right? That was Steve Jobs' big thing. And one more thing, why hasn't everybody picked that up?
I mean, they have in the past. I remember the one time this happened. This was from Sony when they announced the PSP, their original handheld, because I really had to go to the bathroom, and I was sitting in the front rows and didn't want to be rude to just kind of walk in front of everyone. And they said, oh yes, and one more thing. And they announced the system. I think because so much attention was focused on these consoles that there was no kind of additional surprise that they could or was needed to be presented. And I think Sony, once again, at the end, where it's like, we're going to give you some data here. Here's the worst looking PowerPoint ever, and it doesn't matter because we own this room now with all of the data we just said about used games and the price of the console.
Yeah, and sometimes it can backfire on you. I remember, and it's been a couple years since I've been to E3, but I think I went to one of the last Nintendo press conferences, and their big thing was Wii Music. We all know how well that worked.
Yeah.
And part of it too, part of the problem is now all the publishers and game makers are racing to get early coverage in. So they have that pre-E3 Judges Week.
Right.
So they have to spill a lot of the surprises early just to make sure they get the coverage and get the attention. So it's really rare nowadays for anyone to save a big surprise for E3.
So let's go and talk about each of the big stories that came out of E3 one by one, and we'll start with the PS4 since you guys seem to think Sony both really won it from a console perspective. Shu, what did they do right? What were the things that really helped them kind of just solidify their position as the guys to beat now?
Well, like I said, they said all the right things. They basically took direct shots at Microsoft, right? Like everything, they paid attention.
Yeah.
Everything the gamers hated, the gaming community hated about the Xbox One, they just like tackled straight on. It's like, okay, yeah, you could trade games. Yeah, you can play used games on the system, and guess what? We're going to be coming out at $100 cheaper. I think the other thing that they did right that's sort of less talked about is actually that controller.
Right.
Like we all know, maybe we kind of lament that, hey, there's too many shooters on the market, everything kind of looks the same, but they sell well and they move consoles. Call of Duty is a big deal.
Yeah.
But most people tend to like that genre on the Xbox 360 versus the PlayStation 3 because it's just a better controller for it.
Yeah.
Sony actually took steps to address that. And when I got my hands on a controller, I'm like, you know what? I can actually play shooters on this. And now maybe it makes it more compelling to play games like Destiny or Call of Duty.
That's what my big problem with the PS3 is, and the PlayStation 2 is the controller. I just thought was Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, it's really lightweight, and the sticks don't have that level of resistance that you need.
And the trigger.
Well, the precision.
Exactly.
There isn't as much precision, I think, on it.
Yeah, it was always something that only, like, say Insomniac, who only made games for Sony's console, could somehow work around those limitations. But yeah, if it was like a third-party game, you really felt the difference between the two with the controllers. I'm with Dan. They took pot shots, and it's funny because Sony has always been in a deficit the past few years because they go at the end of the day of the press conferences, and Microsoft goes at the beginning.
Right.
And as a result, Microsoft would get to own this 24-hour news cycle that Sony would then have to get into sort of on the following day in all the mainstream press. It didn't work in Microsoft's favor this time because they had to sort of make their statements, and it's quite feasible that some of those decisions on those policies were made during that day after.
Right,
I mean, if
exactly.
you
wonder that.
go back to those PowerPoints, I mean, a 5-year-old could have made something that looked more glamorous than the way that they actually looked. It could have been just one guy quickly typing it up because they made the call.
Well, so Shu, were you surprised that Sony was that aggressive? I mean, it's kind of new for them to really go for the jugular, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, traditionally, Sony really doesn't address its competitors too directly, if at all. And but they were smart. Whoever's like telling them, their speech manager, whomever, right, is doing all this stuff. They did a really good job. They knew all the notes to hit. Like people were cheering for this stuff. It was really weird, and you don't get that kind of enthusiasm from the crowds at these press conferences.
Yeah, were you surprised by Sony going for the jugular on that one?
I was, yes, and I got giddy. I mean, I'm usually so jaded, and I sat there, I was like, oh, this just got really, really fun. Especially Jack Tretton, who I've always liked, and I think Sony should use him more. He's very personable, he's affable, and when they have had to be contrite, it comes across as genuine. And, finally, they were able to utilize him in a position of strength like this.
Right.
And that kind of fun, avuncular way that he just kind of threw out all of these stats. I mean, I think it made it more fun than, say, if the tables were turned and Don Matrick, who I think is a nice person one-on-one, but comes across as somewhat plastic when he's on stage. I was a little surprised, and it was more reassuring that they understand what the landscape was and they went for it. I still think what's quite impressive is everything they said. Within 24 hours, it looked to be a little less than the way that it came across. It now is clear that if you want to play online multiplayer for a non-free-to-play game, you're going to have to subscribe to PlayStation Plus.
Right.
So already you actually have a slightly more expensive system, assuming that you want to use it for all of its assets. That the price of the $400 also doesn't include the PlayStation Eye. And I've heard word that there were original intentions to bundle that in, just as the Kinect is to be bundled in with the Xbox One, but by taking it out, then you can bring down the price. That presents a few problems in terms of how that allows developers to make games that require it, because now you don't know what the install base is, and if you can make something that has more casual sort of use of the PlayStation Eye for motion control and whatnot. And then they also had to retreat a little bit on that used game policy that turns out to be absolutely identical to Microsoft's, where it's still at the decision of the publisher. I think we all know now that no publisher wants to be the first one to foray into the waters of preventing used game sales,
right.
But it really isn't that different a policy. They just said it so much better than Microsoft did that it just sounds like it's a much different console with a much different, kind of way of doing business.
Right, so they weren't perfect. So Shu, what else is missing from the PS4? What else did they miss the boat on?
Well, I was actually going to say the same thing. It's like, that's what I was saying earlier in the show, that it's not a complete picture.
Right.
They just said the right things. They hit all the right notes. But if you dig in a little bit, you realize, okay, there's still some pieces of the puzzle missing. Like how our digitally distributed games going to be managed. There's how's online play going to be done. There's a lot of questions to be answered. But I think ultimately a lot of these things aren't going to matter in the long run. Like we have, for example, in the current generation, we have online passes and things like that. People trying to restrict used game sales. Yeah, the vocal gamers kind of hate that stuff, but it ultimately hasn't affected sales that much. I think there will be a point where people are going to just forget about this stuff and just play the games. Once they start playing the Titanfalls, the Destinies, the whatever, all these next gen games, I think they're just going to worry about all this stuff less and less.
All right, so Adam, you're advising Sony with the PS4 launch. They've got a couple months between now and when they're actually going to release it to the unsuspecting public or the suspecting public. What are the 3 things or 2 things or even 1 thing you'd tell them to do now or over the next couple months to make sure that this is the biggest home run it could be? What do they need to do?
I think they need to explain their online strategy. That has always been where Sony has lagged. I mean, PSN works pretty well now, but that is not true for when it launched. They had the big PS3 apocalypse where it went down, it got hacked. I mean, they've never been too consistent with that. And now that you're pretty much requiring people to pay money, there's a fair expectation that we need to have something that works on the level of reliability of Xbox Live. I think they need to get that strategy out there. I think the other is they have this whole cloud strategy called Gaikai. They've been very quiet on it. Yes, it's going to stream games, but it's going to stream games in the future. What else is it going to do? Is any of it going to be available at launch? Microsoft seems to be more forthright that they will have their cloud strategy in place at the launch of this console. It's these things where they've really been kind of soft pedaling. I think they need some clarity. And I think the most important thing is they have to show off the UI. The cross-media bar that has been part of the Vita and the PS3 is so horrible, so user-unfriendly, and just so just noxious that I think I need to see a philosophical demonstration that they understand the problems with that, and they need to do something that really gets the user of any skill level to get engaged and to discover all the assets that are available both in the box and online.
All right, so
I
go
don't mind the cross-media bar. I think I'm the only one.
I think you're the only one.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, take me back to when the PS3 was launched, Shu. When you did your first story on that bar, you loved it, right?
I like the bar. I think it's very clean. It's very simple. It's there are a few things I would tweak about it, but if I say presented that to my mom, maybe someone who's not into games, who doesn't know what to do with consoles, right? And I showed her the Xbox dashboard.
Yeah.
I think she would understand the PlayStation cross-media bar much better.
It's much more like a remote. It's like left, right, up, down.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
But everything on the cross-media bar is of equitable value because it's the same font. And I like the idea that most people are going to want to look at like where video is or where games are, and that if even within the settings menu, within the settings on the PS3, it's like I don't even know what that does. I don't think I've ever been there, and I'm scared to death I'm going to click on it.
But if you go to, I don't know if we're getting off topic.
No, go ahead.
But if you go to the Xbox 360 and you're like, okay, I want to appear offline to people, or I want to change my profile, or I want to change my gamer tag, all these things are living in completely separate parts of the UI. So it's not like you're used to kind of thinking, okay, there should be a settings area where I could just adjust all this stuff. But sometimes, like, do I hit the guide button to get there, or do I scroll down to here? Do I go to account settings?
That's fair. I mean, I think as someone who obviously has been with the dashboard since its original, very Paleolithic representation, I've been able to grow with the modifications if I was just dropped in immediately. But I think dropping anyone into the cross-media bar is of equitable just confusion and mental disarray.
All right, so Shu, you think they should just leave their interface the way it is? What do you think they need to do between now and November to really solidify what they want?
You know what? Adam makes a good point about sort of selling online better. I think actually they should probably get some of the third-party guys on their side to talk about this because, so for example, Respawn, one of their developers just recently put up a blog post explaining what the Xbox Cloud Service does for Titanfall. And I'm like, this is really well done because this isn't Microsoft corporate speaking. This is a developer saying, well, this is what we can do for you as a gamer, and this is why this is a good thing. So I think, I don't know how many people read this, but if the gamers out there reading that, they're like, oh, you know what? This Xbox Cloud Service should be pretty cool. Titanfall is exclusive. Maybe I'm going to consider getting an Xbox One for my shooter to fill my shooter.
So Sony needs to spend more time.
Sony needs to get guys like Bungie, right? You know, they're working closely with those guys. They're with the Call of Duty guys and say, hey, come here and help us. You know, explain why PlayStation 4 is the platform for consumers.
Right, those cool benefits and what's there. All right, anything for either you left on Sony and the PS4 before we move over to the Xbox One?
I'm good.
Okay, so let's talk about the Xbox One, and let's start with this whole game sharing fiasco. Shu, is this going to kill the system, this whole thing? I mean, they have such black eye from this.
Well, they did the right thing, you know, which is, okay, we came out, we heard what you guys are complaining about, we're going to address it, and we're going to take back what we said. That's perfect, you know, instead of just sort of secretly backpedaling or something, they just face the problem.
It was smart to just come right out and say,
come right out and admit your mistake.
180 degrees, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and this is like, you know, 2013.
So was
like,
Microsoft.
I know. Yes, very much so. So it's you know, nowadays any politician, any corporate speaker, you know, any executive has to learn, don't try to hide from it or don't try to spin it. Just be very honest with your consumer or with your employees, with whomever. So that's good. But I think where they're still going to get killed is the price. You know, I really think now, I don't know the financials of everything and the cost of manufacturing and all this, but if I were Microsoft, if this were financially feasible, I'd say, let's also offer a Connect-less SKU for $400, even though their strategy is to get a Connect in every home. Obviously, that's important, but what's more important, being competitive with Sony or getting that Connect out there?
I don't know, Adam, you disagree.
But no, they have that option. This is one of the many befuddling and just frustrating things about how Microsoft has handled this whole thing. Is I think there's an avenue where the Connect is there. I really do believe that if everyone has the Connect, that's going to open up some amazing opportunities in terms of how games can be developed, more casual ways that you can integrate either voice or motion controls into a hardcore game. Because right now we have very regimented Connect games that no one like me wants to play, and games that don't use Connect. And there is a middle ground, but you need to have confidence that most people have that device there. But they've already shown this with the Xbox 360. They have a subsidized model. You have a contract for 2 years of Xbox Live, and you get $100 to get $200 off the MSRP of the box. That brings down the price considerably, and most people who are going to buy it, especially when like the early adopters, are going to want Xbox Live because that's such an integral part of what the system's experience is. Why didn't they come out with that lower price model?
I wonder if it's because right now, maybe while retailers are putting in their, I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm just speculating, but maybe it's because right now they have to make sure that retailers are happy too, and they don't want to talk too much about price drops and deals and bundles that will not impact Walmart.
Except the retailers are like, okay, how many of these am I going to stock if it's a whole $100 more than what the PS4 is? It's just one of these just kind of, you know, very, very odd, especially because they've already put it into practice with the Xbox 360, that it's not even that shocking that they would do something like this. I think the $100 is going to be an issue. At the same time, I'm a firm believer that if Kinect can come with it, that's going to, the benefits in the long run will be considerable.
See, I'm with you, and Dan, I disagree with you on the fact that they should come out with a Connectless model, because just like we never really had true gaming, you know, true multiplayer cross-net gaming until internet was built in. Remember the consoles where you had to buy an internet adapter and shove it up the back end? Nobody used the internet. You couldn't build it because you didn't know the internet was there. With Kinect built in, like Kinect or Hate Kinect, it now allows you, I think, to, if you're a developer, you're like, everyone's got one. I can just build one and build those functions in. And it's going to enable us to do things that we're not going to see on the PS4 because it doesn't have it.
Or we don't know who has it.
Right.
And you know, and as I said, it seems pretty clear that it was supposed, the PlayStation Eye was supposed to come with the PS4, and I do wonder if we're going to start to see the implications of that maybe 3-4 years down the line, when it's like, hey, there's this cool, you know, multi-platform game, but the functionality, because Kinect is available on the Xbox One, it'll be a more robust game than kind of a slightly more gimped version that has to account for how many people don't have a PlayStation Eye on the PS4.
So let's talk about that $100 price point, because I think it's an interesting issue to explore. Over time, we know these are 5-7 year devices, maybe even longer.
10, I would say.
10 years. $100 is, the prices are going to drop. I'll bet they get closer. Last I checked, and it was the Monday of E3 when you guys were down there talking about everything and getting me all excited about the Xbox One before I heard about the PS4. I went into the local GameStop actually to buy something for a 3DS for my son, but they were like, do you want a pre-order? I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, sure. I got the last pre-order. The last Xbox One day one pre-order in that store. It kind of sold out of its pre-orders pretty much, didn't it?
Yeah, how many were available? I don't know. I really don't understand the magical rubric of the retailer saying, we expect to get this many. I mean, all of that's unclear. We don't have the ship date because I think they're still trying to figure out how many they can get to market for the launch, because I think shortages this time around could be devastating, because you do have boxes that are similar enough that I can see many people walking in, they can't get one, so they buy the other.
But we've seen that, but just using Amazon as like one small snapshot, we've seen that the PlayStation 4 has done much better in pre-orders.
Has Amazon said? Yeah.
Like right now, if you went to pre-order both, you could still, well, this was a week ago when I looked, you could still get an Xbox One day one. You cannot get a PlayStation 4.
I can get an Xbox One day one right now on Amazon.
And PlayStation 4, I think you have to wait till January.
Let's see. And that could be because we don't know how many units are being allocated, though, right?
Right.
Exactly. I mean, there's something very magical and mystical.
But it's unlikely that Sony's like, all right, you get X many, and then Microsoft's like, you get X many, and it's that much more or less.
So the PS4 launch edition is unavailable. The PS4 standard edition, it says December 31st, 2013.
I think it's also, you know, when Microsoft changed their policies so quickly, I don't think that was just because they became shocked about how many feelings got hurt out of this. I'm assuming they have some data there that really showed that the pinch was already being felt, that they needed to correct this as quickly as possible.
I think it'll be interesting to see, and we won't know until December. I don't even know if we know when we'll know how many units get sold across, you know, both systems in the first month. It'll be really interesting to see. So the fact that they backtracked on the whole shareable games and be able to resell games, did they take out more key features from the box that developers thought were going to be there, and now we're actually dumbing down the system again? I mean, Adam, it seems like some of that stuff just isn't there anymore, right?
Okay, whenever I answer this question, I need to put on this protective armor, because apparently I come across as pro-Microsoft. I think we did lose some stuff. And once again, I'm going to say it. There's a way that I believe Microsoft could have presented the no used game sales and the DRM in a way of showing what the benefits are going to be, and they just they missed that opportunity completely. There was something that we know that was the family plan, that at the very least allow with one game to share that digital license with up to 9 people. It's still unclear to me if that could have meant, even with multiplayer, that on one license, you could be playing multiplayer with your friends.
Right, so everyone didn't have to buy a copy.
But I think that there were some other concepts, because there was a lot of excitement around what they were doing with some of these digital features on it. And, you know, when I was only hearing it as slight rumors, that I think they've had to retreat from. I don't know if they have to retreat from it forever, but they've now got to figure out how to reconfigure things so they can adapt it. The way I presented the Xbox One is, I think they had the right system for 5 years from now. Yeah. And it's very hard to sell to a market that only knows how to interpret from what the status quo is. And they just were not clever enough, they were not, you know, verbose enough, and they weren't clear enough to really sort of make the case as to why you would have to take on a burden like the DRM, because it would benefit you in this way. They just wouldn't talk about it either way.
Yeah.
they were not visionaries to the people,
Yep.
to the consumers, right?
Yeah,
They-
yeah.
That's exactly it. Because I'm not the first one to say this, but they talked about that friends and family plan,
Yeah.
about how the potential benefits would be, how healthy that would be for the ecosystem, right? You get to expose the game to a lot of people who may not maybe know about that game or know to download that game otherwise, but they just made it really easy, and then they make it an easy download for them. So if you look really long term, what does that mean? Possibly healthy growth for all developers and publishers, more games sold, and more emphasis on digital distribution and less reliant on physical media. So and that's the future. So what does that mean? Like it's maybe more profits for the game makers. That might mean better games for consumers. It might mean cheaper prices for consumers. Who knows? Like those are executive level decisions down the line. But that's part of the plan. And I think you're exactly right. Is they didn't really share that vision for the future. They just said, here are our policies, and then that's all people saw were policies.
Well, and 2 years from now, they could go back to it, right? I mean, sometime over that 10-year lifespan, we will probably see these policies enacted, I think.
I think so too, and I think Sony's going to do it as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people have wondered, why can't you do an opt-in?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
hey, I'll take the 24-hour ping if you can give me these assets. I think the problem is Xbox Live is probably such a complex system it's something that you just can't suddenly have a two-tier
right,
experience on it all that easily, although I wouldn't be surprised if they're entertaining a notion like that.
Interesting. So, Shu, what would you do? So between now, like you're advising Microsoft, between today and sometime in November when it launches, what are the 2, 3, 1 thing that you would do to try and really get it back to where it needs to be?
The one thing is you have to get competitive on pricing with Sony. And I say connect less because that to me is the easiest way to drop the price. But again, I'm not privy to the exact manufacturing costs of everything involved. But if they can somehow, if they can come out at $400 with the Kinect, then everyone wins except for the accountant, right?
All of us who pre-ordered.
Yeah, so fantastic. That's a win-win scenario on the consumer side. But that's what they need to do because we're not in a healthy economy right now. People aren't going to go in with ready to drop $1,000 on 2 systems, games, peripherals, and all that stuff. So you're looking at probably purchasing 1 or 2. Of course, they're I'm sure you and I are going to get both, right? I love games. I'm going to get both systems.
Yeah, right.
But most people I know will get one or the other, and they're all leaning toward the PlayStation 4. It's just,
What do you think they should do?
I think what they need to do is they need to put a stronger game. And granted, they have Titanfall, but that's something that's not going to be at launch. But when they showed Halo, it was just a trailer, and where I thought they missed an opportunity is you point out with the Titanfall interviews, they need to show what the system can do through a game. That's the best way to reach the audience. And they're talking concepts, they're talking what they have with the entertainment, but they're not showing how it really is relevant to what the early adopter is going to want to have, and that's a gaming experience. Yes, I know I'm going to use the TV aspects of it, but I'm buying it first and foremost for a game, and they've got to refashion their messaging towards how all of this is going to benefit the game. I think there's some very cool stuff in there. I can't tell because they're being so stupid about the way they're talking about it.
Well, so that's the other thing. Wise up and be smart about what you're doing too. So let's talk about the media capabilities for a minute, because we talked all the way through this whole thing, and you just brought it up as we're nearing the end of our Xbox section. The media capabilities, I guess, Shu, are not worth $100, huh?
Not to me. And the thing is, you're also talking about it feels like to me, I don't have studies right now to back this up, but it just feels to me more and more people are leaving traditional cable television for streaming, for the likes of Netflix and things like that. Our current generation systems do that. So they very easily provide accessible television on demand whenever you want. So we're already used to that world. And so all of this stuff is just sort of just bells and whistles. It is cool. If I wanted to show off the cool technology, there's certain movies you want to use to show off your HD TV or your sound system. I'm sure I could bring some friends over and look at what I could do with my Kinect, and look what I could do with the TV. I could do this and this, and the social media aspects and all of that stuff. Yeah, it is cool, but it's kind of a hard sell. I think that's the type of those features grow with you as with your viewing habits. You know, it's like it's all up to the individual. You'll get this machine in, and after time, you'll be like, oh yeah, maybe you can't watch TV any other way. But that's not a selling point up front. Like Adam says, you know, it's like you'd rather have that Titanfall or Halo 5.
Yeah, the media capabilities really matter all that much to you, Adam, or to people in general?
If they were what I thought they were going to be, which is what I believe Microsoft wanted to show, that this would be the cable box.
Right.
That you could go directly into it. And the idea is that right now you're going to have your cable box that you have to route through your Xbox. And I think this speaks to what Dan was saying, is they know that people aren't really watching real-time television. But because of the way that the cable companies have this stranglehold, you can only get HBO Go if you have the subscription to HBO. And so if that could be the cable box, you're kind of resolving that, because it's not really positioned for real-time viewership, but now you can get the apps. It becomes kind of default that you're gonna have access to on-demand or streaming programs, as I think more and more people, especially a younger generation, that's how they consume their media.
Yeah, I know Time Warner just announced an IGN story I'm looking at here that their app's coming to the Xbox 360 later this summer. So, like you said, you can do it all in the existing box. So it's not like there's much there.
Yeah, it's just extra frilly stuff. But you know, actually, to me, more exciting is smart glass, like next generation smart glass integration, and like when they showed Dead Rising 3, you know, there's a lot of cool things you could do with your smartphone on the side with the game that ties together with the game. So I think smart glass is actually going to be a bigger selling point than, say, the PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita connection.
I agree. I think it's the wise developers and publishers that are using smart glass. It's almost like they're not selling a game; they're selling a relationship.
Yeah.
One of the best things I saw was Need for Speed Rivals. And like, I've never been that huge a Need for Speed fan. It's just always been like, oh yeah, it must be November because there's a game that came out. But what they did here is their smart glass app is your garage of your cars. Because, yeah, that's what I don't mind doing on the bus.
Right.
I'm going to go trick out. I don't like doing that when I'm sitting at home with my precious hours I have available to play the game. That's kind of the fun maintenance stuff that I would like to do when I really want to be distracted. I'm at the doctor's office. I'm on public transportation or something like that. And if you think about the way that they can turn aspects of that game into other parts of your life, that's how you're going to have that loyalty. That's how you're not going to return that copy of the game at GameStop, because there's a sense of engagement that's always there. It doesn't have that sense of beginning, that sense of end. It's just something I like to do.
So, good point. Let's move on to Nintendo, who I had a guy on this show a couple weeks ago said he thought Nintendo won E3.
Was it Conan O'Brien? Because he made it clear Nintendo won, and specifically Mario Kart.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure Conan spent a lot of time wandering the halls of E3 looking for it. Well, Shu, take it for me. What did Nintendo do right and what did they do wrong, and are they even relevant anymore?
Those guys, they're almost infuriating to kind of follow, because you're like, we all know what you need to do and you're not doing it, and you just keep doing like this. Looking at their lineup for E3, you almost could have copy pasted from like many random E3s in the past, right? It's like new Donkey Kong, new Mario Kart. Maybe it's not called Mario Party, it's Wii Party now, but it's the same thing, you know, more levels for Mario, Super Mario Brothers Wii. So the thing is, here's the thing, Reggie, you know, the president of Nintendo, came out and said the Wii U, they admitted that we kind of forgot the hardcore guys. You know, this is the U was supposed to be you, where
everyone,
encompassing everybody. You know, we forgot about you guys. We kind of went too casual. You know, if you read between the lines, they're basically saying we went too casual with the Wii. We forgot about the gamers, so we're going to change that with the Wii U. I don't see it. You know, a Bayonetta is maybe one bullet out of an entire clip that you need to take on Microsoft and Sony. So it's just more Nintendo, and I kind of feel like, you know, if I were working for Nintendo, I'd almost give up and say, you know, I'm just gonna be content to be my niche Nintendo first party console, you know, platform. I'm just gonna keep using this to deliver more Mario, more Donkey Kong, more Zelda.
Adam, you're laughing.
I know. I mean, yeah. They forgot about the hardcore. Really, they forgot about everybody. I mean, there's an aspect about Nintendo where I love Nintendo. I grew up on Nintendo, but I'm starting to feel like a parent who paid for their child's college education and then they go into porn. It's like that sense of just like what has happened here? And you know, I don't mind seeing the lineup of games they had. Yes, it's complete copy and paste, but that's kind of what we want Nintendo for. but those games should have already been out.
Yeah.
That's what their first year's worth of games had to be. They just never made a case with any audience. And they have cases to be made. Do you want to play Mario? You got to play it on the Wii U. You want Zelda? You got to play it on the Wii U. But they should be made available. And this kind of pathetic way that they always go like, oh, we just didn't really plan for the launch of this console. You know, our games take a while to make. They've made this excuse so many times. They say, how have you not learned your games take forever to make? If you're going to launch a console, you should already be thinking about the games that are going to be out for it. They could have, you know, they had the market all to themselves for the past year, and they've done absolutely nothing with it. They're going to have Pikmin 3 come out in August, which is great, but Pikmin does not move consoles.
Yeah.
Mario and Zelda move consoles, and by the time that we may have Mario Kart, they're going to be competing against Microsoft and Sony, who have a lot more sex appeal than the Wii U ever will. So it's just kind of befuddling that they suddenly discovered that they've done the same mistake again.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, any Wii U consumer, you know, he or she knows he's going to get those products, right? So you're just kind of selling to the same audience. Now, when Mario Kart comes out, when the next Zelda comes out, all these games, next Smash Brothers, they're all going to sell really well, and they're all going to make Nintendo a lot of money. But it's the same old story. It's just become very uninteresting for us to cover. It's like no one's talking about them.
They're very hard to cover. Nintendo doesn't make it easy to even get coverage.
Yeah.
You know, they speak in this very, very clear corporate talk. They have very, very sort of structured events that you don't really get much insight into what the thinking is. But I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're right. You're totally right.
Well, so how would you fix Nintendo, Shu? What would you do?
They got to go out and get some sexy hardcore games. You know, like if they're not going to make them, they're going to have to partner up with the guys. And I don't just mean making sure Call of Duty is also on the Wii U. You know, they have to do like you take a look at what Sony's doing with Bungie and Destiny, and you take a look at what Microsoft's doing with Respawn or Titanfall. You know, I hate using shooters, but they're very good examples. All these gamers who haven't touched Titanfall are excited to play Titanfall on Xbox One. All these gamers that have never touched Destiny are excited to play Destiny on PlayStation 4. So Nintendo doesn't quite have that something new that's exciting. Like, yeah, I'm definitely going to play Mario Kart. I'm excited to play the next when there's a new Metroid coming out for Wii U. I'm going to love it, but it's not sexy.
Adam, what should they do?
I mean, I think one thing they have to do is they've announced that they have these games. They need to decide on what dates they're coming out. They need to kind of show that they are committed to a particular schedule. That might allow the potential consumer to start to make sort of their plans. Okay, do I need to save up if I'm going to get a Wii U so I can play these games? They need to look a lot less wishy-washy. I think the other thing is they need to fire their top management. I mean, this place is so inward-looking that that's what's allowed them to make these bad decisions over and over again. Iwata should go, Reggie Fils-Aimé should go. I'm not saying that they've necessarily done a bad job, but they need to get fresh thinking and fresh management if they're going to motivate this company to understand that the marketplace has changed and they need to compete in it. And I think by just holding on, not just to the past in terms of titles, but to the past in terms of management, is really what's allowing them to just repeat the same mistake over and over again.
Do you think they have another console up their sleeves anytime soon, or are they
hope
pretty much a
not.
Wii U and that's it? I hope not.
Yeah, I think they'll continue to remain a player in the portable side, but I mean, they got to be crazy if they're planning the next console. They need to fix the Wii U first.
Yeah, 3DS is pretty nice.
Yeah,
I gotta say.
yeah.
I just bought one. I bought one on Monday when I got my Xbox One. I was like, this is actually a really nice. It's a lot better than I thought it would be.
The 3DS XL, I think, really
This is an
changed things
XL,
for me.
yeah, I got an XL.
Because I really struggled with the 3D on the original DS. I now realize I think it had more to do with the screen size and that I'm older. I mean, but you know, it's more comfortable, and we're starting to see exactly what I was talking about. 2 years into the life of the 3DS, suddenly there are games coming out.
Yeah,
you know, and quite a few interesting games, and games that I feel that I have to have one if I'm going to be playing it.
That's why I bought it. I wanted to play Paper Mario.
Yeah.
Right? And it's actually pretty good. It's a new looking
and
at Paper
we
Mario.
have Animal Crossing.
I'm liking it. So. No, look, I'm not a game reviewer. I kind of like, it's like the same thing with a little twist.
Yeah.
But.
I think Animal Crossing is a good
Animal
example
Crossing's good
of
too.
a game that's it's almost permeated everything.
Yeah.
Like I see it all over Twitter, I see it all over Facebook. Like at least my circle of friends, like everyone's talking about this game. You know, I'm not even playing it, but I know it's out there. So, you know, the Wii U needs something like that where everyone wants to play it all the time.
Right.
It's online, it's connected, everyone can kind of deal with each other, and then to kind of get that out there. So, you know, they need that kind of mind share.
Sure, you think they'll move their games to other hardware other than their own?
Not anytime soon. They make a lot of money on software, on their first-party software. Yeah.
What do you think, Adam?
I don't think they will, and I'm of the mind that they should. I think that they are just ignoring a revenue stream by just sort of moving this to other devices, especially mobile. I mean, if some of the classic Nintendo games were available on mobile, I think they're just untapped riches that they have chosen not to exploit.
Yeah, what do you guys think about the HD version of, last thing on Nintendo, by the way, I just want to get your opinions. The HD version of Wind Waker, is that going to be a hit, or is that just like, you're just recycling it all over again?
I'm not the biggest Zelda fan anymore. I used to be when I was younger, but I feel they're all kind of samey. It's pure fan service. It's like if you're gonna make an HD remake of a game, they already did that with some of the N64 Zelda games. So this is a perfect game to just service that crowd. But again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that's all they're doing is fan service, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here's more Mario Kart for you.
Right.
Here's more Mario for you. So that's really all they know how to do right now. So yeah, it's fine, but it's just more of the same again.
Adam, holding your breath for Wind Waker?
I really liked Wind Waker, so I'm definitely going to play it. I still find it very confounding that the game that is unquestionably the best looking of all the Zelda games is the one that gets the HD treatment.
Right.
You usually do that to sort of improve something that was lacking or struggled under the old hardware.
Maybe it's because it was easiest. Because it was already...
that's exactly what I think. It's very simple geometry,
right.
And it's got bright colors. I think that's a very easy HD remake, whereas if you had Twilight Princess or Ocarina of Time, you'd have to go in there and recode the entire thing to make it work.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it too, but I don't, and I'm a big game consumer. I'm not a game journalist, but I don't know. I've not bought a U. I don't know if I'm going to.
They haven't made a case. They haven't made a case for it.
Yeah. I mean, the N64 was a breakthrough. The Wii was, a breakthrough. The U is just, I just don't get it.
I like it for local gaming. Like if I have a group of friends and we just want to do some kind of more party game style, the Wii U is good for that. Nintendo Land's fun. New Super Mario Brothers Wii U is good for that. The upcoming Wii Party will be good for that too. So, but those are very specific, rare cases. It's not the game machine you're turning on every night.
So there was another console there at E3 in the parking lot. The guys at Ouya. Was that whole parking lot thing effective, Adam?
I mean, they got some coverage because there was efforts made by ESA and E3 to scuttlebutt them. I think it's consistent with all due respect, their delusional marketing. That they're supposed to be this upstart that is really trying to sell this story that this is kind of the open console where we're fighting the big boys. So I mean that whole thing with the bus I think played into that. Kind of similar to Nintendo. I think they don't understand they're lost in an echo chamber.
Yeah. And
that the people that they reach with that story already know about it and already have made their decision. It is not effective to get this to the mass market appeal. That really is going to be essential if the Ouya is going to make it through, I think, the next 3 to 4 months.
Is there a future there for them?
No. Actually, there really is very little redeeming about that machine. The only thing I could say that I like is the actual unit itself. It's kind of cool. If I took it out and showed it to people who never seen it before, like, oh, this is a game machine. Yeah, it's kind of sexy. And then you touch that controller, and you're like, what is this piece of crap? It's really flimsy. The triggers are terrible. And here's the thing: is because you even though it's a cheap device, it's a $100 device, you're really putting it up against consoles, right? It's plugging into your living room. It has a 360 style controller, so you want to compare it. And then when you do, it fails on every front. I like how easy it is to set up. It's very user-friendly. The UI is actually pretty nice. But then you start playing the games, and you're like, why would I spend really any time or money playing these things? The games are terrible. The controller is terrible. I mean, immediately the O button, it just got stuck, like my first day playing it. And then my character was stuck, whatever the O button was doing. And it's just not something I want to play. I really don't want to touch it.
Adam, do you feel as strongly that it's no place?
It is, the way you described it, I used to say this when I was back on TV and we'd have our end of the year awards. They want to put us in tuxedos and have lights.
Yeah.
And there's this thing called the Oscars. Don't draw comparisons with things that you will never win. And I think that's the case. Is that presenting it as a console, it's like, no. Yeah. Consoles come with a level of reliability. I still think the best chance they had is they should have licensed the tech to TV manufacturers and had to just go into a TV and Trojan horse it into the living room. But the idea when you buy a console is you're committing. Yeah. And in this, you committed. it's like Jew the Obscure. You know, you marry her and it turns out that she's bald and pregnant, and it's just there's just nothing good about it whatsoever. And I find it a little. I guess I really found it annoying the way that they really sold this idea of being an upstart and fighting the big guys, and how many people kind of, it was like Pied Piper. They just got in line with this, and you know, I think it's going to cause a lot of distrust from maybe some other manufacturers down the line who really have a better, clear idea and far better business acumen.
Well, it's like the kind of companies that are good about going out there and pitching ideas and raising funds and like getting people behind it, but they just ultimately did not deliver.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the landscape is crazy for you. Like the venture capitalists who recently put in some more money into Ouya, they're
Clayton
nuts.
Perkins put in $50 million.
Like, are you guys crazy? Because look at all the competition coming out, right? Like, it's like the what was the one we were talking about before the show, the Game Pop Mini, right?
Oh.
It's like. I mentioned it to you.
Game Pop Mini.
I wrote it down.
Google's.
Yeah, Game Pop
And
Mini.
then
Google is
might get
coming out
into
with
it.
their own, right?
Game Stick, Project Shield, NVIDIA Shield, Green Throttle, like all these guys are all competing in a very similar space. So it's just, and then not to mention Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So it's just,
And
there's
the Wii,
no
don't
way.
forget the Wii U.
The Wii
Yeah,
U.
and the Wii U.
So there's just zero chance for this system to do well in the long run.
Okay, you guys are pretty pessimistic on the Ouya. What about Google coming out with a game machine? Does that have a chance in hell, Adam?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the only company that might pull this off is Valve, because they have such a brilliant mystique and there's such a reliability in terms of their product that even Google, I mean, it's like this need to prove the Android platform is somehow competitive to a 360 and a PS4 is just absurd to me. And I don't think people are appreciating that when we think of these smaller games, you know, that we typically have on mobile, we like them on the mobile platform. We have a different relationship with different types of media at different times.
Yeah.
You know, when I sit down on the couch to play on my TV, I know the kind of experience I want. It's one that I've committed time to. When I'm playing, you know, something on my phone, that's, you know, it's entirely different. And the two, I mean, it's gonna be a while before someone figures out how to cross that divide. And just by having a console and saying I'm a console, it's almost kind of an insulting reading of your marketplace.
Well, we talked about this last week. I was recalling that the GameCube had that Game Boy add-on. Remember that you could plug it to the bottom of the GameCube so you could play your Game Boy stuff on your TV? You know, I thought that was kind of, I played the Zelda game here and there for a little while, and I actually think I'd love to be able to play some of the 3DS games on my TV as well. So I kind of would like that connection, but I agree with you. I mean, in the end, it's kind of a gimmick, right?
I think, you know, I don't know if you guys understand how powerful Google is. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they stopped.
I've heard of them.
I wouldn't be surprised if they stopped this transmission.
Did you see my
already.
tattoo?
Everything you said negative about Google, no one's heard, because Google can do whatever the hell they want. That's the only thing. It's like, if someone were to say, I want to get into that market, you're crazy. But if you're Google, okay, you
can afford to do it.
You can do things no one else can do. So
I mean, look, I still think Chrome as a platform shows a lot of potential, because I think you know, gaming through the browser, and it really looks like, because you know, Chrome can do C++, and they have demonstrated with games I would have never thought, you know, capable of running through the browser. I think that that's the market that they should go after, because that is where free to play is, and like, if they can get high resolution, high quality games, you know, in something that's like ostensibly free, you just download the browser, I think that's where their efforts should be focused.
But it could be both.
It
could be
be
doing exactly that through a console, you know, just for something that's more ease of use, like that you could just sit on your couch and play through your TV.
I don't want to ever underestimate Google, but you know, after the success of Google Plus, I do know at least that they can have some missteps.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Well, so the Ouya, it's funny, you guys, the only thing you talked about, a redeeming feature of the Ouya, was its design, and I was up on Etsy, I have this up on my computer, where people are actually building wood cases for the Ouya, so maybe even their design isn't that good.
They want to cover that up.
Oh, Etsy.
Well, the thing that I think that the Ouya should be merged with the Roku. Imagine one box. It was like the Roku and the Ouya all in one.
Trojan
$50.
horse it. But once again, I think
$100.
Roku should be coming in through TVs. I mean, it's just one of those, like, buying an object is a psychologically different thing than buying, like, say, the TV and these things come with it. And I think there would have been a ton more potential, because you can ignore it. your expectations don't have to be as great. And I think both Roku and Ouya probably would do better to figure out how they can license the tech and get it into other devices.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's talk a little bit about games at E3. We talked a little bit about Need for Speed and a couple of the others. Real quickly, what was the game that you walked out of E3, and Shu, I'll start with you, that you were least excited about? You're like, oh my God, I thought that was going to be good, and it was a disaster. Anything that you were like, oh my God, they totally blew it.
Mad Max.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was going to say.
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked me first. Mad Max, because here's this game, it's a huge open world. You're driving around. And there are what I like about Mad Max, they have some cool car stuff, right? But the spirit of Mad Max is not just building up cars and having car combat, right? There's a spirit to the movies. Now, granted, there hasn't been a Mad Max movie in a long time. Who knows what the next one might be? It might be all Hollywoody and stupid. So me kind of longing for old Mad Max. I understand maybe I'm not the target market, but when you go in and I'm watching the developers play this game, I'm like, it just doesn't look fun. It's a lot of stupid AI, and you're just running around doing small little action set pieces around the world. So it's sort of like Just Cause 2, but Just Cause 2 was fun because you're ziplining everywhere, you're stealing vehicles, and you're doing all kinds of insane stuff. So you strip a lot of that out. You're grounded in this car that you're spending a lot of time tinkering with, and then you realize, okay, well, all this AI and all this shooting on all these missions aren't that fun. So I was super disappointed because they didn't capture the magic.
Also, I mean, they showed me the map, and I was like, oh, wow, it's all this. And I said, okay, so I can go to Thunderdome. Like, well, this is our interpretation of the Mad Max universe. And it became increasingly clear that no Thunderdome, no Master Blaster. I mean, it's like
no Australian accent.
Yeah, no Australian accent. But that sense of anarchy, which is so essential to Mad Max, is kind of lost in just kind of, okay, we're going to have shoulder pads or football pads on our shoulders, and that's it.
All right, so real quickly before we have to go, because we're almost done here, what was the one game that was like a total surprise and you're like, wow, I want to play that. I didn't even know that was coming. You already talked about a couple, but Adam, give me the surprise game that you sort of wandered around and said, that's the one. That's going to be cool. I can't wait.
The Division. I'm going to steal this from Dan because I bet he was going to say it.
He's got to come up with another one.
This
There's
is
got a
the
little time
new
to think
game
about it.
from Ubisoft. Once again, I don't know if this game is going to be incredible, but to have an online RPG that takes place in a virtually contemporary setting, that's a very, very daring thing to do. That we've broken out of the dinosaurs, out of the dragons and out of the sci-fi model into something that's a little more grounded. I just want to see how this develops because that's what we need to do to further the conversation in games, and it was just exciting to see that, and it's just beautiful beyond belief.
Sure, what about you?
It's going to feel like I'm kissing Bethesda's butt, but it's honestly not the case. But the two big surprises for me were Wolfenstein New Order, because it had this really tense, awesome story that kind of was reminiscent for me of the best scenes from Inglourious Bastards, where it's not, I can't speak for the shooting and actiony stuff. Maybe that will be boring. I don't know. But the story elements were incredible. But even more surprising for me was The Evil Within, where it kind of captured what makes movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre so horrifying. That kind of feeling of isolation. And there are scenes in this game where I'm like, this is how my nightmares are. Like when you're trying to run away from some evil thing that's going to catch you and you can't quite run straight. You're kind of stumbling. You don't have all of your wits about you. I think this game captures that really well. So it was really scary to me. So
that's
awesome. That was probably my biggest surprise.
Well, ups and downs, both consoles, whatever you think. I can't wait for November to come. So it's going to be so much fun to play all these games, these game systems. Adam Sessler, Dan Shu, thank you for joining me on Downloaded. And by the way, I want to thank Phil DeFranco, the latest member of Revision 3's family, and For Human Peoples, his t-shirt company, for giving me this great t-shirt that says, don't panic, I'm from the internet, which I think is super cool. That's all the time we have here on Downloaded. You can go on comments down there and tell us what you think and who you thought were the big winners and the big losers at E3. Until next time, though, you've been watching Downloaded.